Okay, it's 3 minutes past, so I'm going to get started, folks. Thanks to everybody who has joined today's session, the webinar focused on neurodiversity. Welcome, and I'm really looking forward to the next 57 minutes or so. I am confident, I'm certain that you're going to enjoy it. You're going to learn something new over that time. Just first of all, thanks again to ITA Cork for hosting this and the invite to MC that. Vivian O'Mahony is on the line there as well, so Vivian and I will be in constant contact during this to monitor the chat and the questions that you're more than welcome to submit. I'm honoured to be hosting this, and very special thanks to Juror, to Peter and Adam for joining the panel today. I'm going to introduce those and give each of them time to tell us about their stories around neurodiversity in a couple of minutes. And as I said, I'm positive this event will be not only inspiring, but insightful and informative on the topic of neurodiversity. Each of the speakers we have will be sharing their knowledge on how to best raise awareness of neurodiversity in the workplace, and they're absolutely all experts in that area. We're going to run the session as follows, so I'm just going to do a quick intro here, and then I'm going to pass to each of the panelists and we have some questions that have been submitted beforehand, so we'll get to those, and maybe with about 20 minutes or so left, we're going to open it up to you for your questions. So feel free to submit those as we go through the session, and we'll do our best to get to as many as possible. So very briefly, quick background on myself. I'm Senior Director Analyst with Gartner. I've been there for the last nearly 6 months, fast 6 months. I haven't physically met any of my colleagues yet. And when I joined, I noticed very early on in the research that we're doing, there was very little, if anything, written around neurodiversity as a topic, not well researched internally. So I saw that as a huge opportunity. And then the more I started to dig into it, the stronger I felt this is a concept that is not only not well publicized, but also not well understood in many ways. So I wanted to start with a definition just to make sure everybody's aware. Neurodiversity is a concept where neurological differences are recognized and respected in the same way as any other human variation. And these differences can include those labeled with dyspraxia, dyslexia, ADHD, autism, and absolutely others as well. So just to keep that in mind as we're kind of going through this. When I was putting my research together, one of the things that became very apparent is, I suppose, through my own experience as a manager or working with other managers or leaders, you often hear this idea of thinking differently to solve problems or challenges that you might be faced with a different approach, a different mindset. And as I was digging into the research and learning more about neurodivergent individuals, they absolutely think differently. So that's a huge advantage that you can bring to organizations with that different mindset. Not only can you approach problems differently, but you can inspire others around you to think differently as well. And I'm sure that's going to come out a lot through the conversation we have today with the panelists. And from the research I did, it was focused predominantly on two aspects. One was around attracting neurodivergent individuals into the organization, how to attract neurodivergent individuals in. And then the second piece of research was around making the workplace more inclusive for neurodivergent individuals. And they're two sides of the same coin and extremely interconnected. And I think with the questions that we've seen coming in, we're going to address probably both sides of that today. So again, lots to get through. Really excited to hear from the panelists. And without further ado, I guess I will first of all introduce Peter Brabazon, who's the CEO of Specialistern. Peter, welcome. Delighted to have you on. I know in the research I've done, Specialistern has come up a lot and has been cited in there, so it's great to hear from you. And maybe let's hear from you on your introduction, your story, the work you do in neurodiversity, and yeah, take it away.
Thanks very much, Rob, and thank you very much, ITA Cork, for having me here today. It's a real pleasure. So we're Specialistern, or Specialisterne in Danish, which means special people. And we particularly have focused on autistic people until about a year ago, but we've now really working with those other groups that you've mentioned, Rob, like dyspraxia and that. And we've actually a series of partnerships with such groups. And often, in fact, we were already working with them because, as it turns out, somebody with autism may also have dyspraxia, dyslexia, or ADHD, as you mentioned. So it's quite a good thing to do. But the other thing is, those partners have seen us as being important in what we do can be applied to their candidates, as we call them, as well, their participants. So who am I? I'm an electrical engineer. I did work in communications for a few years, but mainly in energy, and worked then on a program called Discover Science and Engineering, which is about having more people join your type of industry, particularly the IT sector. And that is how I made and met a gentleman who ultimately became quite important for us. In about 8 years ago, I left what was then Furfoss and joined and set up this business with 2 others as the general manager. At the time, we had no money, no place, no anything. We were 3 parents with autistic sons. And in that time, though, I did know a gentleman in SAP, Liam Ryan, who's the managing director here in Ireland. And we still work out of the place that he gave us in more physical times, as opposed to the virtual place that we are now. So in a nutshell, we're a not-for-profit. Half our income comes from the state and the EU, and half our income comes from charging fees and providing services, particularly to our partners in industry. Our 2 key customers are candidates that we place. We're a matching service, people who have skills to work in industries, particularly the IT industry. 50% of the people that we place go into the IT industry. We started at the end of 2013 and placed our first 4 people in that year. And last year, we were up to about 60 in work. We've worked with about 900 people to date, and over 300 of those we've actually placed in work. And the others, we're at various stages of preparing them for work, because a lot go back into education or whatever. Education is a very important area for us. Starting then, we have expanded quite a bit. We're particularly expanding somewhere like between 10 and 15% a year, depending if you're either looking at companies, which we've got over nearly 40 now, company partners, or if you're looking at candidates who we're placing. And so today, what we're planning to do is expand by, in the next 3 years, somewhere between 50 and 100%, but working through partnerships. A very important partnership for us. Obviously, other companies like yourselves, we have 5 people working now in Cork, and I'm glad to say that eCentaur is the first real core IT person that we placed. The others have been mainly in science in places like Janssen and that, and that's great. And I hope that somebody from eCentaur is here today, because they've really been excellent to work with so far. But we particularly would like to expand in Cork. That will be on the employer side, but also we're working with the universities. That was one thing we found from the first 500 people that joined us. They were typically qualified with some sort of 3rd level qualification. Nowadays, it's a average level of level 8. That's the most typical one. So honours degree. And but we're working particularly with those who are in colleges, because we've got particular funding from the so-called Ability Programme, from PUBL and the European Social Fund, to support people who need a placement as part of their qualifications. And that's where I would like to reach out to whoever's listening today, is we need placements for those people, because we're particularly working now with CIT and IT, Tralee, and 6 other colleges around the country at the present time. That would be really a great thing for us. What I would like to also, though, is share some lessons over the period that we've been working. So we've been working, as I say, nearly 8 years now. And the one thing that we have noticed in companies is the awareness of D&I, diversity and inclusion, has really increased. A lot of people who sign up to D&I don't walk the talk for quite a while, but now we're finding it's increasing dramatically. And so we're having sort of Zoom meetings or webinars like this today. The other thing is that I suppose that the colleges, from the point of view of people, the colleges have really stepped up in this area as well. And that's why we're in there working with disability services and also the career placement services, for obvious reasons, as I mentioned earlier on. But for companies, the biggest thing I think is to make success of this area is to have a relationship with somebody like us or similar body, like you have Aspect down in Cork, who we have worked with. And then I suppose the big thing would be is to prepare. Now, you must remember every autistic person is different. You only know one autistic person if you know one, or a dyspraxic person. So it really should be built around them. The big thing, the lessons that we've learned is the accommodations do not have to turn the company upside down, and they're usually very light. Most of our candidates are a bit like yourself today, Rob. They'd be wearing ear defenders rather than just a communication. That's a simple thing to do. Some don't like to have a wall behind them, or do like to have a wall behind them. Some don't like bright light. Some want to see the garden, like to see the garden outside. They're the sort of things that are really simple to do. So what I think, it's not costly. The other thing is preparing the team who are going to onboard the person. And the big thing there would be to identify a buddy who's usually steps forward because they're sort of knowledgeable or have some feeling or empathy for that. And the other thing is we brief everybody who would be involved with the person. And the key thing around that is disclosure, that the person just tells people what their need for accommodation is, what their weaknesses, what their quirk is. And there, in a nutshell, is where we're going. So I look forward to being questioned extensively on any of that. Thanks, Rob.
Brilliant. Thanks, Peter, for sharing that. Some really interesting stuff, and I think the relationship piece is very important from what I've seen from the research as well. So thanks for that. We'll move on to Juror Colin, Senior Manager Talent Acquisition at Delger. Delighted to have you on today as well to talk about your experience around neurodiversity in your role. So please dive into that.
Great, thanks, Rob. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. As you mentioned, my role is Talent Acquisition Senior Manager with Dell Technologies. I'm based in the Cork office. I've been with the organisation for just over 7.5 years. And I suppose how I became involved in the area of neurodiversity was back in 2018. I attended an event where I met with members of the Dyspraxia Association of Ireland. And those members, some had were searching for work and looking for employment opportunities for a while. Others had just recently completed their undergraduate studies and looking to find their graduate programme. And I also met with parents of children that had dyspraxia and that were currently in second level education. And one thing that struck me, that in spite of all of the social advances and I suppose awareness that is now evident around the importance of diversity in the workplace, along with the incredible developments that have been made with assistive technologies, there still is, I suppose, a fear around the whole area of disclosure. Secondly, I would say that for neurodivergent talent, they still face a number of obstacles or barriers when it comes to accessing the workplace. And then thirdly, just really the fear and the worry and concern of the parents of what is the future for their children when they finish education. So from there, I suppose, along with the support of executive leadership and through partnering with our True Ability Employee Resource Group, we really wanted to find out what could we do to make a difference in this space. I suppose it's estimated globally that almost 10% of the population are neurodivergent. But I suppose if you look at it from an Ireland perspective, in the academic year of 2018-2019, AHEAD, so the Association for Higher Education Access and Disability, they completed a study of third level students. And what their study showed was that almost 16,000 students in education for that academic year had disclosed as having a disability. And of those students, almost 38% had a specific learning difficulty, 8% had autism, Asperger's, and almost 7% had ADHD and ADD. So from a hiring perspective, our role as talent acquisition is to find the top talent for the organisation. So that's, you know, those numbers, it's a huge number of talent that we're potentially missing out on, that have a lot of positive attributes to bring to the organization, from, you know, high level of expertise and technical and business skills. I would say, you know, thinking from a different perspective, creativity, innovation. So really, you know, we wanted to, I suppose, kind of identify ways that, one, that we could firstly increase awareness internally around the importance of neurodiversity in the workplace, and change the, I suppose, the thought process from as it's a nice to have to it's business critical. And then secondly, to connect externally with students that are in education today, to increase their awareness and to change their thought process as well, from having a disability to a different ability. So, you know, so that's our journey. We're still early on in our journey, but certainly have made progress. But I would say that through the collaboration with external organizations and with our colleges, that we're certainly making progress in that space.
Excellent. Great insights there. Great data to back it up, right? The studies are clear, and definitely can relate to that from the research I'd seen. I think it was something around 77% of organizations were effectively filtering out neurodivergent individuals, not opening up due to their systems and HR processes. They weren't being looked at. And on the flip side of that, only 10 to 12% of neurodivergent individuals were being employed either part-time or full-time in a number of different countries. So I think, yeah, the awareness piece and shifting, making those changes is critical, right? So that's great, and I think we have some really interesting questions to kind of delve deeper on that, Juror. So last but not least, we have Adam Brown from Vmware, Neurodiversity Program Ambassador. Adam is coming to us from the US. Good morning, Adam, and be great to hear from you, your story, your journey on this. So yeah, please take that away.
Absolutely. Just quick on who I am. Again, Adam Brown, like Rob said. I am a senior solutions engineer, actually on the sales side of VMware, but have a strong passion around neurodiversity, mainly due to my son, right? My 12-year-old son, who is autistic, who's on the spectrum. So I'm going to say about 3 years ago or so, I was at a conference for one of my customers, and one of the speaking events, one of the sessions was called Autism at Work. I'd never heard of what Autism at Work was, but having an autistic son, of course, I was going to jump in and say, "What is this? I have no idea what this is." And I sat down and participated in a wonderful event that was delivered by SAP. Within the first 5 minutes, I was completely sold on this idea. I had to do this idea. It instantly became a passion. Like many people who are in the same position as me, you hear about this and you're like, this is a no-brainer. Why aren't we doing this? For parents of kids who are autistic, my personal experience here in the States is when my son was handed down his diagnosis as a child, it's like doctors, they sit you down and they want to tell you that, you know, there's something bad that's happening here, and we're about to deliver some bad information to you. And that theme really kind of kept on quite a bit, you know, even when talking to some of the teachers and people that were professionals. You know, my wife and I would constantly say, you know, we see college, we see, you know, a bright future for our son. And unfortunately, we were getting kind of contrary to that information, you know, quite challenging, I think, for us as a family. And then I hear this about these programs, these Autism at Work programs, where they are recognizing the value of autistic people and placing these wonderfully talented people within their organizations. And it was the first time that I felt, hey, this is amazing. This is extremely promising. And I can bring this idea back to VMware. We have a very strong culture, a very long-standing culture of diversity and inclusion, and this was a new area for us to dive into. The statistics were very compelling. It was great to put this stuff. I brought this to VMware. I talked to so many people, and when you go into a program like this, ultimately, it's the same reason you do D&I for anything, right? Or anybody or any demographic. Some of the statistics that were spit out before, you know, some additional statistics to that is, you know, 80–85% of people who have autism are either unemployed or underemployed. It's very common that you hear an autistic person say, I've applied 100, 200, 300 times to different companies and not gotten through the door there. And it's a reflection on your own company and your own readiness and your own preparedness, right? You can't ask an autistic person to be different, to behave differently. It's who they are, right? You wouldn't ask anybody to do that. So it's a call to evolve a company's own practices. And a lot of these things are universal in design. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But I started the program at Vmware. I'm the originator of it, brought it to the teams there, had my my human resources team really get behind this, my leadership really get behind this. And as I say, I'm kind of just the tip of the spear to get this started. And then we had just a wonderful amount of people from throughout VMware get behind the effort, put proper pieces in place to help us actually operationalize this and take a look at this, right? Program managers and, you know, talent acquisition and all these folks. And it's been quite remarkable. It's been fantastic. It's been a wonderful journey. I'm also the neurodiversity ambassador of the program. I would say that.
Yeah, great momentum it sounds like you're making there, Adam, and we'll definitely kind of, you know, hear, I suppose, what's next for you and how that can potentially grow as well. So great intros, guys. Thanks so much for sharing that. And we have some questions that I have ready here to maybe go through, and I see some coming in on the chat as well, which is excellent. I suppose one of the things I noticed as I was putting together the research is definitely to that word momentum. There seems to be momentum behind the neurodivergent or neurodiversity movement. More and more large organizations, and predominantly in the IT space, are running pilots and putting together business cases that show real value for that, and it's expanding, which is wonderful. Peter, maybe to you, from your experience over the last number of years, what have you seen as the major changes, and what has evolved, and, you know, what stands out for you in the experience you've gained so far? You're just still on mute there. Sorry, Peter. There you go.
I think the big change really has been the level of awareness has gone up. And the other thing, linking to Adam's point, is that what we discovered also, to work in a company, you really had to ideally get to the top man and get to leadership, or somebody like Adam, I was obviously near the top man anyway, actually the thing really forward. There's always, in every company, there are people, because of the high presence of people with neurodiversity, there are people who will carry the flag for this topic and are only dying to. And actually, a funny side effect of that is the overall engagement of staff goes up, and participation and productivity, in fact, I think Microsoft found this, goes up as well. It's a sort of a no-brainer, because people will actually do this. Like, we meet with HR in SAP over lunchtime, and they're fine with that. And that's like the lead for the Autism at Work program that Adam mentioned. So that's one of the big changes, and that's why I think overall companies are doing far more on this. The other thing is just general awareness then for the staff, because you need actors as well. What we did was just did some very open things. Why don't you come along, anybody's interested, and talk to us in the company, and just and then we sign them up, and they're our ambassadors for the programs in future. Also, if you get one manager in, he will sell it on to all of the others eventually. That's what also happens. There's a multiplier once you're in. It takes a little time to get in. It takes many years sometimes, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. Adam or Juror, have you found anything similar to what Peter said, or different?
So definitely, I agree. I think the message needs to be supported from the top down, from executive leadership. And I suppose, you know, in Dell certainly, not only is this supported from our global executive leadership, but also from our local executive leadership as well. I think also, you know, the awareness is very important, and for everybody in the organisation to realise that we all have a role to play in this. So it's not only managers, or it's not hiring managers, every person. And again, you know, something that we did do around this area was we rolled out a neurodiversity awareness programme for people in the organisation. So basically it's a programme that explains, you know, what is neurodiversity. We talk about the different demographics within neurodiversity, and almost it creates that safe environment for people to ask questions, to learn more, but also to, you know, to talk about their fears. You know, what if I do the wrong thing, or what if I say the wrong thing? So really, you know, it kind of reinforces that support that we're all in this together, and we're all supporting each other through this.
Mm-hmm. And in my experience, actually starting the program and my own journey here, visibility is absolutely pinnacle, is absolutely key here. You know, it was really a fantastic experience starting this at VMware. I have the very fortunate experience at VMware where no one said, you know, why? They said, why not? Right? VMware has a very powerful culture of saying, why not? Right? But really, I think being on the sales side helped me quite a bit in that I had to build somewhat of a sales campaign around neurodiversity. Much like any idea, you have to sell your idea. It wasn't hard to sell the idea, and I just talked to everybody and anybody that would take the meeting. And like I found just tremendously, there was this overwhelming. I would talk to people, and you know, people would hear about this, and they'd say, "What's going on here? This sounds amazing." What I have found is probably about 1 in every 3 or 4 people that I spoke to at VMware had either direct or indirect connections to someone with autism. And they were like, this is great. You know, so in that, I kind of worked my way with my own manager, my manager's manager, my senior directors, and all through that, gained feedback every single time and made my business case stronger and stronger. I talked to everybody and anybody, not just VMware. Partnered us with like JP Morgan Chase, obviously Dell, SAP, EY, DXC, like these are like the names in doing this. And every single one of the companies that I talked to, extraordinarily helpful. We built the business case, and eventually through the passion of some wonderful people, I'll shamelessly drop a name in my own company because he was incredibly impactful. Dirk Holmdel is absolutely amazing. He's our chief open source officer who has direct ties to our CEO, and wrote this amazing email, this really breakthrough email for me, and said, hey, check this out. We need to do this. You know, my CEO saw it and he's like, again, why not? Sent it back down. And from there, we really we continued to pick up steam. It was really quite fantastic. If I can give just even a word of advice as you try to start this within your own organization, you might run into people that say why or no. I didn't have that, but I definitely had people that questioned it. You know, someone told me once, don't expect everyone to be as excited as you are about this, but it's your opportunity to make them excited. And if they're not, you just move on. But those people that do challenge or do say why, their feedback is some of the most valuable feedback that you're going to get. So you need to look for those people within your own organization. It's going to help you. They're ultimately giving you feedback. They're giving you constructive criticism on your own journey, the things that everyone is going to ask along the way, and you continue to iterate, you continue to build. And eventually I built a whole presentation out of it. I made somewhat of a cheat sheet, a single white pager, walked around the offices of Palo Alto, walked into the leadership, and if they weren't there, just kind of left it at desks, walked around. Great experience. Again, coming up from the top down, well, bottom up and the top down. And that's how we got started. It was great.
Definitely sounds like you use your sales skills very well there, Adam, to try and sell that business case. But I think that the key message for me, again, going back to the research, was in early stages it was a nice thing to do, right? That there was no basis on this is the right thing to do. But as you dive into the business case and as you look at the success stories in organizations that have improved productivity, to your point in innovation, Peter, it sells itself. The return on investment is there, right? And I think one example I'd seen was at SAP. One of the neurodivergent individuals on one of the projects was able to identify some code error that resolved multiple challenges that saved the company in the region of $40 million, and that's published. So, you know, just that alone would pay for the program multiple times. I just want to say
one thing quick to your point, Rob. The goodness of the program should be inherent. You shouldn't have to explain the goodness of the program to anybody, right? In my opinion, the program being good for people and what you're doing, that shouldn't need to be explained. In my view, in a for-profit company, you have to explain the value to business, right? Everything has to boil back to profitability. It's just the way it is, right? If we were a non-for-profit, then we'd be a non-for-profit and it wouldn't need to boil back to that, or boil back to mission. But in doing this, there is clear value to business here. Clear value to business here. You called out quite a few things earlier on. And these programs, like I said, they have ROI to them. They have return on investment, right? And they're valuable to the company. When you look at the statistics that I pointed out before, right? 85% unemployed or underemployed. This is a wonderful talent pool, right? A fantastic pool of talent that, like it's been pointed out by others, it's an untapped talent pool, right? And the goal of this program is the goal of any D&I program, is to recognize that talent comes in every shape or form, from every wake of life, from every point on the globe, and seek out that talent, because we're all in a talent war. You know, we're all competing for the same resources at the end of the day, and it behooves us to make sure we're getting our top talent from everywhere we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And bringing it nicely onto talent and talent acquisition, Juror, I'd like to ask you about the whole process of recruitment, from sourcing to, and a question that I get sometimes asked is around, you know, job descriptions and how you advertise positions for neurodivergent individuals. Just a little bit about what your experience is with that and how that has developed. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so I would say, you know, firstly, I suppose, you know, it's important to look at the company website, because most likely the first place a prospective candidate will go to look at is the company website. So it's important that, you know, that website, along with the social media, really demonstrates the organization's, I suppose, approach to diversity and inclusion. So one way of really that you could demonstrate that is by, I suppose, promoting your employee resource groups that you may have within the organization around that D&I. I would say from, you know, job descriptions, it's very important to ensure that the job descriptions are short and concise. And, you know, certainly from my experience, I've seen that where hiring managers may list essential requirements, you may have like 7 to 10 essential requirements. And when you really delve into them, you kind of see, okay, what's really, really essential and what's a nice to have and what can be learned on the job or can be learned through training. And it's really important for just to list the essential requirements, because neurodiverse candidates can be quite literal. So for example, if you have listed you require 2 years experience, if a person has 23 months experience, they may not apply for that job because they don't have the extra month of experience. So really important to just have your essential requirements on that. I would also say, you know, it's I suppose it's important as well to partner with the colleges and with the students. So really, you know, kind of going on site into colleges or through Zoom nowadays, but connecting with the students that are, you know, registered with the disability officers, and increasing awareness around graduate programs or employment programs that are available, and clearly explaining what is the recruitment process. So what should be expected, what's the application, what should be expected then after the application, at the interview. So you're setting very clear expectations of what's going to happen at each stage. I would say as well, you know, around the recruitment process itself as well, it's very important that that there is that awareness that it's safe for candidates to disclose or to share if they may require an adjustment as part of the interview process. And for them to know that if they do disclose, that their application won't be treated any differently, because ultimately we want to ensure that the candidate does the best possible interview when they complete it. I think as well, you know, another important factor as well is, as we discussed earlier, the whole area of around awareness. So it's really important that anybody that's involved in the interview process, that they're aware that, you know, some neurodivergent candidates may find it difficult to maintain eye contact, or if there's a panel type interview, that can be quite distracting. So maybe just to adjust and be agile with that recruitment process and have one-on-one short 30-minute interviews as opposed to an extra long interview with 3 or 4 panelists. But I think the most important thing is to, I suppose, to really, for an organisation to be agile and flexible with their approach. And where possible as well, that to look outside just completing competency-based interviews. So what we have introduced is that as part of hiring for graduate programs, there's different options, or there's different steps as part of that. So we have the competency-based interview, which is 30 minutes, but then we also have a practical exercise. So for example, if somebody is interviewing for a software developer role, they would then complete a coding exercise as part of that. So we get to see their technical expertise. So if they're not good at a competency-based interview, they have the opportunity to demonstrate their technical expertise in the other part of the interview. So we really get to see the overall candidate.
Very, very interesting. And I guess maybe even looking at it from a different perspective, Peter, you're probably coming at it kind of from the point of view of supporting the candidates as they apply. Is there any other perspectives that you'd like to share around the process?
Well, yeah, just building what Juror has said there, really interesting. First of all, we do competency-based interviews, mock interviews with candidates, okay? Also, with some companies, we have them do mock interviews or even mentor some candidates as well to get them used to things. Because you must remember that often diverse people, because they've been diverse, haven't had that summer job in the local pub or delivering newspapers or anything like that. They don't have stories. So we spend a bit of time getting them to build stories so they can talk about how actually they are good team players, but it was on the project in college, you know, rather than, you know, that sort of stuff is a key thing. The key features, and I'm glad Jer mentioned it, is one is clarity. Plain English, particularly Irish people, are quite ambiguous when they're giving instructions. You might do this, or I'd like that, but not a specific time and whatever. It's very hard for a person, particularly who have autistic traits, to actually prioritize them, and they need, now it's better more in the IT industry because most people have electronic calendars. That's a great way to get them to be able to prioritize and know what's coming up, what's important. One of the things is, though, yes, preparing, and yes, onboarding, and we will talk, for example, to the interview panel, but the other part is retention. It's a big part, and what we provide is not only the buddy who's in the company, but ourselves. The person can always get directly back to wherever the support agency is. That's a very important feature. We're still supporting people. We're only nearly 8 years in place. We're still supporting 2 of the first people that we placed in year 1. So you can imagine what it's only a light thing. One guy is pushing to grow his career. And by the way, he's earning a lot of money already, but he's got a relationship. He's got a new place to live. You know, it's all of that happens as well, you know. And as career development has become a big issue for us. We work on the Autism at Work program in SAP. It's one of our obviously key companies. And that's the issue, because they have now 12 people from us working away there. And I'd say half of them are sort of 3 years, 4 years in there. And they're thinking about, well, what could I do otherwise? So I think that's an important part of it. The other one is, and Jerry mentioned it earlier on, was about disclosure. We like people to disclose up to the level that is necessary. They don't have to have a red flag over them saying I am. But if people around them understand, for example, they don't like going to a noisy canteen, that's excellent, because then their team of co-workers know that, and they don't think they're being socially ignorant or something like that. Or as we have one guy who we have in a lot of videos, who doesn't like tracks, he only likes tracksuits, only wears tracksuits. And the only thing for him to accommodate, it was the texture, it wasn't the color, but he was wearing bright orange and blue tracksuits. He now has been working for 7 years, very solidly, moved from Microsoft to SAP very successfully, and he's accepted. He wears black tracksuits, no problem. So there's all that sort of stuff as well. But those are such small accommodations, you know, that anybody can tolerate, because he's a genius, you know.
Very interesting. Adam,
I
just
want to add one thing. I want to stress this idea of universal design, right, to everyone on the phone who might be thinking about starting a program. As Juror talks about this, as Peter talks about this, I don't want to give this appearance that we are doing anything drastically different from our own native experiences. If anything, going through this experience caused draw out and made us realize, hey, we can make our overall hiring experience better, right? Being very succinct and very clear in your open recs and in your job descriptions isn't just for one person. This is something you want to apply everywhere, right? You want to make sure you're capturing all the top talent out there. You don't want to scare anyone away with the wording of your open job descriptions. And universal design is really what we go for at Vmware. The things we do here, the things we apply here, grow within here, right? And if we started doing something in our neurodiversity program, we take a look at that and say, hey, this was a cool idea. Let's either see how this can boil and bring this into our everyday universal hiring process, or vice versa. Oh, we already have a great process that we're going to put into this, and it works fantastically. So I just wanted to stress that, right? It's not hugely or massively different. There's some reasonable accommodations that need to be made, but it's a very great learning and educational experience overall for your own companies.
Yeah, no, very good and well said, and definitely something I learned along the journey so far as well. So we have about 14 minutes left, and I think it's time to go to some of the questions that have popped up on the screen. So I'll try and get through as many of these as possible. The first one, maybe Juror, I'll direct it to you, and maybe Peter or Adam can jump in afterwards. So for someone who is quite mildly neurological, example, high functioning Asperger's, is it better that they should seek to gain employment or placement through a dedicated neurodiverse path, or go down the normal route, and normal is in quotes there, path into placement or employment? So any experience on that, Juror, that you're in, could share?
Yeah, so I'd say there's definitely advantages to both options. One thing I would say is for the person to explore all options, you know, and kind of see what suits them best, kind of from discussing with different people in both options. I'd also say if the person is maybe in education, to work closely with their career placement officers to discuss this, and kind of again to consider the options that are available. Or also, you know, a number of external organizations also offer job coaches for people that may be starting out in their initial job search. And again, we'll be able to work with them to identify the best option for them.
Yeah, very good. Peter, what's your take on that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Either route will work, but you have to do your homework, as it were. If one of the things, if you come to us, we will also give you advice on career choice, you know, that type of thing. You don't necessarily have to be placed by us, though, in a partner company. That's important, because ultimately, you know, our number one customer are their candidates. And if they go off and join a company, but they've been prepared by us, that's fine. For example, we've got a gentleman, he wouldn't mind me saying this, in the department of the teacher, who did exactly that. And he's been great for us, because he's actually an advocate for us and our service, but he got the job himself. That's a good way. I think it's like Adam did with regards to talking to the companies about sharing experiences. I think you can do, the more homework you do and chat, for any diverse person to chat to whoever, your friends, family, there's going to be other people who you will know. In fact, you often find they're in your group of friends. They're often, because you come together a lot with like groups, and that's an important fact. One thing that we found that supports people is to actually set up coffee days, as we call them, virtual ones, people who are similar. And indeed, there's one group of Asperger's who meet downtown in normal times, let's say, to have a drink together. So they're the sort of things. Network, I suppose, is the answer to some of it. And come, we're open. And whatever you want to do after we've worked with you, we've no problem. And we don't charge you. That's very important. We don't charge candidates. We make our money from the companies.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yeah, Adam?
I'll throw something in there. Also, I think a point of clarification, right? And this has been confused sometimes, that if you're neurodiverse, you have to come through our neurodiversity program. No, that's not accurate at all. Anyone is free to apply to any job at VMware anywhere in the world. Self-ID is a big deal to us. I know it's scary to self-ID. We desperately want everyone to self-ID, because if you need a reasonable accommodation, which, by the way, I'll say this also, you don't need to self-ID to ask for a reasonable accommodation. But if you do, we have a better idea of how to bring these accommodations to you and you know, potentially make you more comfortable. We're familiar with that. But like I said, the people that we have had come through our neurodiversity program have had such negative experiences elsewhere and within their career. And a lot of them keep asking us, you know, or ask themselves, why is this so hard, right? We've had people come through our program, amazing people, that the story isn't uncommon. I applied to 100, 200, 300 different places and I didn't make it through. Why? It's not them that didn't make it through. It's the company. It's going back to Peter. It's the education of the company. It's not a reflection of them, right? So we have tons of people at VMware that kind of came out of the woodwork when we started this program and built this into our culture. Very much a culture thing, right? And put their hand up and say, hey, I'm neurodiverse. So tons of people already made it through our standard hiring process. And, you know, it's the people that really are asking themselves, why haven't I gotten a job? Why am I, you know, why hasn't anyone seen my talents or recognized them? That we bring through the neurodiversity program, where we recognize, hey, we really want to help them out. We also want to help the hiring teams. We want to educate and guarantee a certain level of success there.
Okay, very good. So, Juror, maybe a question that I can direct to you. There's a lot of momentum around placements and programs for third level qualified people with neurodiversity. Is there anything being done at school level regarding setting up apprenticeships in conjunction with industry for PLC courses or PLC students? Or is that anything you've seen in your areas of research or work?
Yeah, I suppose it certainly is something that we're in early stages of with exploring. I suppose, you know, the whole area around apprenticeships and partnering with local schools. I suppose, you know, certainly one program that we are rolling out and that we rolled out earlier this year with third level colleges was the Show Your True Ability program, where members within Dell Technologies share their journeys with students with disabilities of, I suppose, you know, living, you know, with a different ability and making that transition from education into the workplace, and around their journey and experience of disclosure and the benefits of that. So now we are in January, and we're rolling that out within second education, I suppose, to increase that awareness to the students today that are in second level education, and through that, I suppose, you know, increasing more collaboration with the secondary schools as well.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Peter,
just a short one on that too. Yeah, we're working with an ETB, Colossus League in the north side of Dublin, to develop programs that would be associated with apprenticeships, specifically for neurodiverse people as well. It's got delayed, its launch, because of COVID, but we'd hope to be up and running early in the new year on that. It's one of the, I mentioned colleges earlier on, and they have all been typical third level colleges. You might imagine that teaching a level 7, 8 degrees and up, but actually Colossus deals with level 6 and 5 as well. And that's, I think there are real skills in there. Okay, might be admin in an IT company or something that they would fit into, because there are people here that really, a bit like Adam referred to, are unemployed or underemployed, and that's up to 90% in some cases, and all of them nearly come to us. They're unemployed, or actually they're seeking to move up in their career path, but it's just because underemployed is a pretty tough place to be, you know. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that perspective as well. Couple more. One question, I suppose, for everyone on the panel. Do the panelists have any advice for neurodivergent individuals who have no idea what type of work or industry they might like to work in? How can they understand maybe where their passion lies, or where might be a good place to focus? Who would like to take that?
Kick off on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So we've got my team has a background, different backgrounds, and that obviously I'm an engineer, but the others have social backgrounds, accountancy backgrounds, and that type of thing. But what we do as well is we set up coffee mornings where effectively a person, for example, from the media industry briefs these young people who are starting to look for jobs. The average age is usually about 23 is the average age we're working with, who have been unemployed a little while, and to brief them on what their industry is like. And we're also working with a well-known insurance company, where we've taken 3 mentors from the insurance company to work with 3 people who are looking and thinking about financial insurance areas to be briefed, mentored. So there's no obviously money exchange in there, but these are 3 young students who are being advised on what it's like to work in that particular industry. That's one thing that we're going to grow. We see there's a real need for that, because with all due respect, you people in the industry know all about it. And you know, when you arrive the first day and you get a job in your industry, wow. And you can imagine what that's like for a neurodiverse person. And that's why we have obviously buddies and mentors and all that type of thing. So it's a very important area. And certainly if you want to come to us again, we'd be pleased to talk to you.
Yeah, very good. So we have about 4 minutes left, and I do want to maybe leave a minute at the end just so everybody can share how people can get in touch. But the one, I suppose, question that seems to crop up is, what is the one piece of advice that you could give, the most important takeaway that you could share, each of you, for the panelists that they can take on board and really, you know, leave with today as something that can be most impactful? So maybe Adam, with you, what's the one best piece of advice you'd like to share?
I'm gonna stress what I stressed before. Really, this is universal design things. These things make your company better overall, right? Mental health is a huge part of what we go through every day, be we neurodivergent, neurodiverse, or not. Companies today have to take a focus on the mental health of their overall employees, especially in this very profound time in the world. You know, people are working from home all the time. It's put certain stresses, different stresses on people, right, for this COVID breakout and everything they're experiencing. And just those support systems need to be built in. They need to be universal design. They are not that different from the things you do today, and it's actually just minor, I would say, tweaks to your existing process if it's not there today. On the communications part, just real quickly, I'm personally honored that VMware made it onto the Disability in Autism at Work Roundtable. If anyone Googles disability in and autism at work, you're going to find basically the Autism at Work Roundtable, which is which is a list of organizations today that have neurodiverse programs that are extraordinarily welcoming, that want you guys to apply who are out there if you are neurodiverse. And if you're a company, it is VMware's charter, it is the charter of everyone on that Autism at Work Roundtable, is to approach us. I want to talk to everybody and anybody in another company for any questions. It's my honor to talk about these things, and I want every company out there to start a program and integrate this into their hiring practices overall. So universal design, talk to everybody, check out the Autism at Work Roundtable, talk to Peter, talk to Adele, talk to whoever you can. I started just searching through LinkedIn and I found a whole bunch of people. So.
Very good, Juror. Have you anything to layer on top of Adam's great advice there?
Yeah, so I would say, I suppose, you know, certainly everybody in the organisation has a role to play in this, but also I would say that, excuse me, I suppose not, you know, it's important to remember that not everybody that is neurodiverse will disclose. So therefore, you know, it's really important that managers have all-inclusive management practices, and, you know, things such as clear communication skills around setting deadlines, priorities, but also really getting to know each individual team member, getting to know what are their strengths, maybe what are their challenges, and also just not assuming that everybody has the same preferences, be it around communication style, workspace preferences. So really for the managers to get to know each individual person on their team, and then ultimately try to build the most inclusive work environment for everybody to bring their best self to work.
Great, very good, Ger. And Peter, very quickly, a couple of takeaway points there.
Well, I think for companies, Rob, the thing is just to start in a corner with some people who want to do this, and link out to companies or organizations like ourselves. And then for candidates, start talking, doing your homework a bit, but also just contact us. And I know we're going to give the contact details later. So thanks very much. And thanks very much for the time.
Brilliant. So we're just gone over time, guys. I know there's a bunch of questions we didn't get answered. We'll try and maybe take them offline and get answers. Great attendance. The hour flew by. I've taken lots of notes as well, so I've learned some interesting stuff there. Again, thanks to the panelists for their insights and sharing, and thanks for everybody for joining, for the questions. This will be online probably tomorrow, over the next few days. We will include contact details, how you can follow up with all of us if you have any further questions. And other than that, I just say thanks again. It's been a real pleasure to host it. Great to meet everybody, and great to see such engagement and such interest in the topic. So with that, we leave it there, guys. Thanks again, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, everybody. Good luck.
Take care, guys. Good luck.